Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a sci-fi movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie Bounty Killer. So Bounty Killer is a kind of post-apocalypse movie akin to the kind of Mad Max series, but it actually looks more like a video game. And this movie is actually adapted from a graphic novel, and I actually believe it was made as a short film before this in 2011. So, like I said, it's a post-apocalyptic movie, and ultimately the story, or the setup I should say here, is after this sort of the apocalypse, the kind of governments have fallen, and essentially the world is run by corporations, and they're obviously only in it for themselves, and kind of ultimately are kind of really taking advantage. And ultimately these become kind of the bad guys, and there is a kind of a new council. It's called Council of the Nine, that ultimately sort of deems these white collar criminals and ultimately makes these bounty killers kind of almost the heroes of the piece, and they're kind of going out to sort of try and bring these sort of white collar criminals who have tried to make sort of capitalism sort of go crazy and bring them to justice. It follows sort of two of these these bounty killers, and we get told at the beginning there's pretty much, it looks like there's loads of them, but it really focuses on the two main ones. Firstly, a guy called Drifter, who is played by an actor, Matthew Marsden, and he's kind of the original bounty killer, and he's one of the top ones. But again, the second character is one called Mary Death, who is kind of the most famous bounty killer, who is this sort of very sort of sexy female bounty killer who sort of dresses up in kind of high heels and stockings and suspenders and everything. So really sort of focuses on these two characters, and there seems to be a bounty out for Drifter, and obviously this sort of sets all the other sort of bounty killers after him, but Mary Death, being sort of very close to him, doesn't quite know what's going on, and ultimately sort of wants to sort of find out. And really is a kind of a chase movie along these sort of like desert wastelands, and they sort of encounter this sort of group of savages known as the Gypsies, who have their own sort of backstory with Mary Death, and ultimately the bad guys are this group called the Yellow Ties, who are these sort of evil corporation types led by sort of Christina Loken. So it's kind of a little bit of an out there story, to be quite honest, as you can probably tell from the plot description, but I have kind of sort of shortened down somewhat. So it's very much a style over substance film, this movie. So it kind of really falls into probably more of a B movie category. But I have to say the production value on this, for the most part, looks pretty decent, and it's a very well made film. I think the choices and the aesthetics, like I said, it's kind of a little bit more style over substance, but it's visually very, very striking. I guess if I had to have one gripe with this, I think sometimes the CGI looks particularly sort of subpar. There's not a lot of CGI in it, but when it is kind of there, it really looks out of place because it kind of looks pretty bad. You could argue it's kind of trying to go for this sort of 300 sort of look, but like I said, because the CGI is relatively sparse, it's not in for most of the film. So when it is sort of in the film, so to speak, it kind of looks a little bit out of place. But there's lots of practical effects in regards to sort of gore and sort of quite imaginative deaths and things like that. And there's a great sort of chase sequence which is very reminiscent of The Road Warrior, with kind of all these sort of gypsies who are kind of dolled up in this sort of skeleton makeup, which looks pretty good. And they're sort of chasing after these our heroes. Again, it's not a massively original movie. Obviously, there's plenty of these sort of post-apocalypse films, and like I said, it kind of lends itself much more to a video game. I mean, the way the characters are, and the way they look, very much, if you can imagine, they're sort of straight out of very sort of hero worship, very kind of like male, misogynistic type of kind of characters that you would probably see in these sort of video games. They really sort of over-sexualise the women, and pretty much, I mean, all the women in this film are pretty much either kind of dressed up in a very sort of slutty way, or they actually are prostitutes. There's not a female character, which is kind of just a kind of your bog standard sort of female character, so to speak. So it really is. This is what I mean. It's not going to be for everyone, perhaps, and but I think I actually quite liked it. It maybe meanders a little bit in the middle of the film, but I found it, as a particularly well-made film, and I think the director hasn't done a huge amount of stuff before this. He's only done, I think, probably a couple of movies. Nevertheless, like I said, I actually enjoyed it. I think the characters, although they're not the most deep characters, they were kind of quite likeable and quite interesting. But it really is, it's more of a visual spec to it out of anything. It very much kind of reminds me of almost like a kind of a low rent sort of Tarantino-esque sort of movie in a way. I think maybe if Tarantino had sort of directed a post-apocalyptic movie, it would look something along the lines of this. It almost kind of looks a little bit grindhouse. So I'm actually going to give this one a 7 out of 10. I think it was, you know, quite an interesting movie to watch. Better than I thought it was going to be, and a little bit more sort of sci-fi than I was expecting as well. I was kind of expecting it's just one of these like bounty hunter sort of action films that are set in the desert, but I didn't realise it was kind of more of a sort of a sci-fi movie. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, go check it out. Anyway, leave me a comment. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.